Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for episode 134 of the MeepleCore Gaming Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Jennette, the Metal Meeple, and in this episode, I go over the games, Color It, King Frog, Custom Heroes, and much more. Intern Alexa, ask a random question.
Here's a question for you. What's your favorite thing about one of your grandparents?
Favorite thing about one of my grandparents? Well, both of my grandparents are not here any longer, but when they were here, they were just super cool to talk to. You know, the types of jobs and things like that they were into is nothing that I am into. They were very hands-on with their craftiness as far as, you know, they can make furniture, they can weld, they can do all kinds of stuff. I'm a computer guy. So it was neat to kind of see and hear all that. You know, maybe they made something really cool, or they tell you about their childhood. You know, I walked to school with 10 miles of snow type of stories. That was always fun. But one of the coolest thing is I wasn't much of a fisher, like a fishing person. I don't really care for the hobby of fishing, but my grandpa, one of my dad's side, I would go with him a couple of times and stay at this little kind of motorhome at a lake, and he would teach me how to fish. And I remember I had like a Scooby-Doo fishing pole, and then later just like kind of a normal fishing pole. That was kind of neat. I really enjoyed that. I remember going to my other grandpa's house and playing games on their old Coleco or something in television, you know, just dating myself at that point. But yeah, it was pretty cool. It's neat to talk. I think everybody's grandpa is more, maybe not everybody's, but when you speak to older gentlemen or even ladies, you know, or whatever, they, the type of jobs that were available back then is very different than what's available now because of technology and opening up all that field. And you had a lot of trade type of jobs, or, I mean, I guess you had like, you know, assembly line and stuff going on there as well. But it's just neat to see somebody who's super crafty. I like that. Yeah, they're just really fun to talk to. I don't know how to any very specific thing, but that's my answer. Anyway, you'll notice that I am by myself on this episode, and that is because due to a couple of reasons, we weren't able to schedule a time for George and I to record together. He had some interview stuff going on. I had some other things going on. One of those is I started playing Final Fantasy XIV online, which doesn't help anything at all, because anytime you play an MMO, you lose out on a lot of time. So the time I did have at night, I've spent playing it with my brother. So we pushed the podcast back a night because of that. And then that unfortunately was like a snowball effect of time. So either way, we are going to, myself and Eric and a couple of our friends and stuff are going to be at Lexicon this weekend in Lexington, Kentucky. If you are planning to go to that, let me know. Shoot me a text on, Instagram, or, to any of our MeepleCore social media accounts. Or if you want to shoot an email to meeplecore@gmail.com, let me know you're going to be there. It'd be cool to meet up with some of you all, some of the listeners and everything, and hang out. Maybe we could play some games. I mean, the whole con is basically playing games at this point. They might have some other events and stuff, but we don't have any of the events scheduled at the moment. So that is what we will be doing. So if you're going to be at Lexicon this weekend, which is July 30th through the 1st, let me know. And I hope to see you there. Other than that, like I said, I've been playing Final Fantasy XIV online. I've got like a roughly level 30 character at this point. I say roughly, it's basically 29. It's almost 30. And at that point, you actually get to switch over to your main job, which is /class, which I'm going to be a summoner at this point in time. Although I am leveling up a rogue, and that will go into ninja. That sounds super fun as well. The game is really good. I like it. The early stages aren't doing anything different than most MMOs at this point, or the good ones anyway, like World of Warcraft or even Guild Wars. That's kind of what I feel like the game is, a combination of that. Like old school WoW, though, where you have like tons of abilities and such. And it even gives me some EverQuest vibes when it comes to that as well, especially from the caster perspective, because you're standing still quite a bit and there's not a lot of casting on the go. Although that could just be the Arcanist, which is what I started as. Either way, after I play this for a little bit, I'll have probably a different episode where I'll go a little bit deeper into the game on my thoughts and everything. So it's a huge learning experience just from everything that you need to know, because this game does have 3 expansions already, and the in-game and going forward into the expansions dramatically changed the game, I believe, as far as the quality of what it's presenting you. There's a lot of cut scenes and CGI. It's very Final Fantasy, obviously, considering the name. And I'm super excited. It is really, really a lot of fun so far. It's also super fun to play with my brother again, because him and I haven't played MMO style game in a very long time. I mean, at least 3 or 4 years. So it's really cool to sit down and get to try that out again. If any of you all play Final Fantasy XIV online, we are on the whatever the middle data center is. I actually don't remember at this point, but in the Americas, there's 3 data centers, and it looks like one's like West Coast and one's East Coast and one's in the middle. That could just be how they're printed on the graphics of the world on that screen. But we are in the middle data center when you do character selection. Next time I speak about this, I'll say it specifically. But I do know that the world we are on is Bahamut. So it is that collection of worlds. So that data center. Sorry, I should have looked that up beforehand. I just know I'm on Bahamut, but I don't remember what data center. Either way, if you're in that collection of worlds, I'm assuming we can play together. So definitely feel free to hit me up on any of our MeepleCore social media. Let me know your character name, what world you're on, or whatever, and we can be friends. That'd be super cool to be able to have some people that we can play with, especially if, you know, you guys are, well, I mean, we might not be able to play right now because I'm leveling up, but eventually, or if you have a character on my level, either way, eventually we'll hit the in-game levels and we'll be able to group up. That would be super duper fun here. This episode isn't going to be very long because, like I said, I'm kind of recording this specifically just to try to make sure I get an episode out each week. I do have some games I'm going to go over, and it naturally is shorter just because when 2 people talk, there's a lot of back and forth. When one person talks, you just kind of say your thing and you're done. You don't have anybody retorting you, right? So it's going to be a little bit shorter than normal, but I think it's going to be really cool. I played some neat games. I chose the ones that I did not play with George recently, so he didn't have a lot to say about these. Next week, he'll have some stuff to say about the ones we're talking about then. And anyway, before we get into it, just as always, if you want to support the podcast, check out MeepleCore.com. Click that Humble Bundle partner link, and anything that you purchase from there, any of their game bundles or items that they have, we will get a cut from, and you'll help support the show. You'll support charity. It doesn't cost you anything extra. So please check that out by going to MeepleCore.com and clicking that Humble Bundle partner link. Anyway, I have 3 games to go over for you. I will let you know that 2 of these are mostly kids games, and then there's one really cool trick-taking game. It is, so we got Color It, King Frog, and Custom Heroes. So first up, we have Color It. This was published in 2020, and it's by HABA. The designer is Lena Burkhardt and Gunther Burkhardt. The artist is Sandra Kretzmann. And this is a 2 to 4 player game. It takes about 10-15 minutes. It's for kids. This is absolutely a game for kids. So I just wanted to let you know that ahead of time. So as you're listening to the rules, you're not like, wow, this game's very basic, right? It is a very basic roll and write game. It's a roll and color game because you have like these little coloring sheets. They do have some art on they're full printed color, but the parts that you're going to be coloring are black and white, right? So there's like a rainbow and there's a bunch of hot air balloons or a house, and then flowers. And there's 2 ways to play the game. The first way is very basic. I think it's intended for everybody to kind of win at the same time. Just because I think you roll out 1 number and then 2 colors and you can kind of pick what you want and there's no restrictions and stuff. So everybody's going to fill in their coloring sheet basically at the same time, which is really good for kids because if they don't like to color or anything like that, like one of my kids doesn't typically gravitate towards, it really got him into the mindset of, oh, this is a game, even though he's not thinking about all the rules. And my kids are both under 5. This says ages 4+. One of my kids is 2.5 and he was loving it, but you had to point out where he could color and he picked a spot and stuff. And it was really, really fun. The second way, the alternate way, which is pretty much the main way to play the game, I assume, is you roll, there's 2 number dice. All these dice have 1, 2, and 3. So 2 copies of each number. And there's 5 different colors. And then the 6th space is a star, and that is a wild. You can pick whatever color you want there. So in the main game, you're actually going to roll all 4 dice, and then everybody uses that same roll, and they just decide what they want to do with it. So on my sheet, I might pick, maybe the die was a 2 and a 1. Maybe I pick the number 2, and then I pick the red, right? And somebody else can pick whatever. So if there's a blue and a red and a 1 and a 2, you can choose whatever combination that you want. It doesn't have to be the same as everybody else. Very typical roll and write style. The difference is with the variant 2 is that you actually you have some kind of restrictions based on the coloring sheet that you're using. Everybody plays with the same sheet, but if you're coloring like the rainbow, each bow or line of the rainbow has to be one color. So one row can't be like red, green, blue, yellow. It has to be all red and then all blue. And there's only 5 rows, so you can't use one of the color, or 4 rows, so you can't use one of the colors. Same thing with the other ones. The flowers are the same way. There's 4 different flowers. Each flower has to be the same color. The house, I think, is like you can color it wherever, but the one color can't touch another color, basically. And I believe that might be the same way as the hot air balloon. I haven't played that one yet. We've played multiples of the other ones. So that's pretty much the game. You roll it, you color. Whoever fills in their sheet first wins. Oftentimes, multiple people will win. And it's just super fun. This is a very light, very introductory, obviously kid level game. There's no way that any solid group of adults will really enjoy this after, just trying it out for, the sake of trying it out. Oh, let me try it out and see if maybe this is something my kids might like. If you don't have kids, or you don't have very young kids, I should add, then this is something you just don't even need to look into. There's nothing here that is going to draw, I think, adults' attention. However, it is really awesome for young kids. I mean, the learning tool about let's color, but there's a game behind it. I think that's super cool for them. They really enjoy that. The choices of the coloring pages are super cool. I mean, it applies to pretty much anybody. My kid loves rainbows and hot air balloons. So that was like their favorite ones. I mean, they haven't even actually drawn on the hot air balloons, but they like that one. That's the one they wanted to play. But then we chose the rainbow instead, multiple times. And the house is really cool. I think the house is neat because you can't put the colors next to each other. That one might be a little bit harder of a concept for kids to plan ahead with what they're coloring. The rainbow is such a good one. The flowers are such a good one. But yeah, overall, there's not a whole lot to say about the game. It doesn't take that long, depending on how fast your kids can color. It does kind of want you to promote staying in the line. We had some issues with them coloring really fast to catch up with us because we were done real quick on coloring our rectangle or whatever. And they would start color real fast. It's like, no, stay in the lines. Take as much time as you want. You don't have to wait for us or you don't have to worry about us waiting for you or anything. So it does help keep kids in the line because you don't want them to just have a mess there because then you don't know what they haven't colored. And that's it. I think that it's a reasonable price for this type of game. I think it was maybe $15. I'm sure it's maybe on sale sometimes for 10 or something. It's a very reasonable price for a roll and write. And I like that for kids, obviously a roll and write incorporates the idea that there are no turns. Everybody plays at the same time, which works tremendously well with young kids. It's got like really cool bright colors, the coloring pencils. I would suggest maybe, now that I've mentioned that, adding more color pencils. We played it with 4 players primarily, and it only comes with 2 of each color. And there were many times where 2 or 3 people, or even all 4 people, wanted to color with the same color. And it helps to have additional ones on hand and a pencil sharpener because young kids like to press a lot harder than adults, and those kind of get worn down more. So, yeah, I highly recommend it. I think that all this stuff really works for little kids. No turns. You get to color. There's some sort of game going on. You can even have the kids pass the dice, even though the rule book, I don't even remember if it mentions, it just says roll the dice. I don't think it mentions passing them or anything. I think it's a good idea to have the kids pass it because it shows like taking turns and, okay, now it's your turn to roll the dice. Now it's your turn. And it's just super good for little kids. They won't play it that many times. I mean, it is very the same every single time you play it. So you'll get enough out of this box, which kind of makes me say that each of the pads doesn't go very far. So I don't know how many pads there are. I'm just going to say there's probably 20 sheets on each pad, which is like 80 sheets in the game. The one pad, if you play it 2 or 3 times, that pad's like seriously depleted. The problem is I don't know if I would want to laminate something like this and get markers out because markers can get all over the kid's hand as they're trying to, because these sheets are little. So when they're trying to put their hand on it to color, they're going to get markers and, erase the spots they've colored. So it might just be easier to buy another copy of this or maybe get online and print out black and white versions. I guess you could print out color ones, but it's probably not worth it. But anyway, enough about that game. If you have young kids and they, even if they don't like the color, this is pretty cool because it's a game, right? We're going to play a game. Really key words there. Anyway, check it out by HABA. It is Color It. Next up, we are talking about a game called King Frog, published in 2016 by Brain Games. This was designed by Gunter Burkhardt and Dennis Kurpz, which is kind of neat because the game that we just went over just before this, I didn't even notice this, is Color It, and they are published by the same, or designed by the same person. So, King Frog is a small little game, obviously intended for kids, so I want to point that out there. The weight is 1 out of 5 on BGG. It says 7+ on the age range. I did play this with a 5 and a 2.5-year-old, but the 2.5-year-old was basically on a team with his grandma. So we won't count that, but my other son is 5.5 and he was playing this just fine. So I will say that the age of 7+ could probably come down slightly depending on how well your kid kind of gets games in general. But in this game, you have a very small amount of components. You have a frog piece, which is like it looks like a bigger disc with 2 little eyeballs glued to it. And these eyeballs are little balls with painted little pupils. It's pretty cute. And there are 3 lily pads per player color. Plus there's a neutral lily pad, which is basically just it's not a lily pad, but it's in the shape of one, but it's actually rippling water, which is just a blank space. And then you have a couple of wild lily pads. And we'll talk about those in a second, but basically you put all this stuff in a circle. There's a specific way to set it up, so that not everybody's their lily pads will get stuck together. But you have this big circle. The youngest kid's going to place where their frog is, and then the rest of the people in turn order go right one space above that. And the whole game is played going clockwise. Everybody's got a hand of cards. You got a 1, 2, 3, 4, and a 5. You'll choose one, put it face down, and then everybody reveals. And then that's how far your frog's going to move. But you do it in the lowest number order. So whoever played the lowest number will move their frog first. If there's a tie, it's whatever frog's in the furthest behind. There is a little crown that you put on the first frog, the one that's in front, and that's the king frog. So you know where the beginner frog or the furthest in the line is, because they can get pretty spread out. And that's also another way the game can end, but typically not. So you play a card, you flip it over, and you move. The lowest number goes first, and you will skip the spaces where the other frogs are, because every space can only have one frog. And if you land on a card that's your color, or on a tile that's your color, so lily pad, or the wild lily pad, you get to take that card you played back into your hand. Otherwise, you lose the card and it stays face up. And so the whole point of the game is seeing how far you can go and keep your cards, because if you run out of cards, you are eliminated, your frog comes off the board, and the other players keep playing. Now, there is player elimination, but the game is simply 10 to 15 minutes. It's not very long. And it's more on the 10-minute side if players have played it a couple of times, if the kids kind of get the concept. And that is pretty much the game. The only other way the game can end is if the king frog laps whatever frog is in last place. We always call it eating them because my kids are funny, but really it's just leapfrog at that point. This game is pretty cool. I actually randomly bought this for some reason at half price. I saw it and, I was like, oh, maybe that might be kind of a neat thing for the kids. They love the components of this game. The little cards are like mosquitoes and they laugh at them. And the actual frogs themselves are really well done. They're pretty cool. And they love the little eyes on them and everything. And my son loves to make him do little front flips every time he jumps on a space. He's like, whoop, whoop. It's super funny to watch. Now, I mean, that slows the game down. So I'm going to have to hey, let's just move our pieces and play, right? The only thing that's really kind of meh about the game, and I don't know if the kids really realize this, but they are starting to after many plays, is when you have one card left, you are auto playing the game. There is no decisions to make, which makes sense. But typically your frog won't go more than 1 or 2 rounds like that because the other players know that you have one card left and they already know where you're going and what they can play to move ahead of you or behind you. Because obviously if I want you to move first, then I'll play a higher number type of deal. And it's just really sad because sometimes it will go 3 or 4 rounds before they get out because they keep landing on their color or wild just randomly, right? Because other people aren't paying attention or it just happens to work out that way. And it's really sad to watch them be like, well, I can't do anything. So it's like they just have that one card. It'd almost be cool to house rule it to where you're out when you have one card left so that you're always making a decision at least between 2 cards. And it gives the other players like, I wonder if he'll play this or this. But even then, there's not a lot of decisions because you want to play the card that's going to land you on a lily pad. But the clever player might play the other card and make you not land on a lily pad of your color. There is a little bit of decision there. Obviously, this game's weight's super low. I'm not trying to game the game like an elite gamer or something, but it's worth mentioning that it gets a little stale when you have a lot of players with low cards. Actually, it gets pretty fun when you have a lot of players with low cards. It's when everybody else has a lot of options and one player keeps losing their cards, typically because they're like the younger gamer. I think that the game overall, though, is really good. I really enjoyed this, and I thought it was for kids games, man. Anytime a kids game is like, I will play this with kids no matter what. I might even try this with adults to see if we can, or more adults, because it was me and my grandma and my sons. So it'd be cool to try this with maybe a whole group of gamers because it plays up to 4 and see if, how it goes. This game is very reminiscent to the game Get Bit by Mayday Games. The difference is you're moving over players and, for the numbers and stuff, like kind of leapfrog, cause, obviously it's part of the game's name and stuff in the essence of what's happening. But if you like playing Get Bit with adults, this might be one that you could try out. Or if you like playing Get Bit with kids, this is another version-ish type of thing to try it with. And, yeah, I'm very glad I picked this up. My kids really enjoy it. I will say if you have younger kids, definitely give it a go. And that is King Frog. So the last game on this episode is Custom Heroes. Custom Heroes came out in 2017 by AEG, so Aldrich Entertainment Group. It was designed by John D. Clare. There's no artist apparently, but I know somebody did art. And it might be on the box, but on BGG it's not listed. This is a trick-taking game in which the deck of cards is 1 through 10, and there's a copy of that set per player. So in a 4-player game, you have 40 cards. On your turn, you're going to play as many cards as you want, but they all have to be the same value. And then the next player has to play the same amount of cards equal to the same value or higher. So if I play 2 5s, you have to play 2 5s or 2 6s or 2 7s or whatever. If I play 3 7s, you got to play 3 7s or 3 8s and 3 9s. And you're saying, well, if there's only 4 cards in a 4-player game or 5 or 6 players, how would you triple up on cards? We'll talk about that with the enhancement cards in a second, but that's the idea of the game. Is unlike other games where you have like straights and you're playing, 2 pairs and things like that. It strictly is just pick a number, play as many cards as you can. The next player has to play the same amount of cards of a number or higher. Now, if you play the same number that the person before you did, so if I put down 2 5s and player 2 plays 2 5s, it will actually skip player 3. So if you play the same thing equal to the person before you, you will skip the next player in line. And that is a good way to get over somebody that has less cards, because the whole point of the game is you're trying to go out of cards. There is no winning tricks or anything like that. If you run out of cards, you win that round, but it's also, everybody kind of wins because depending on what order you go out. So if you go out first, or in a 4-player game, if you go out first, second, third, or fourth, there's a chart on this hidden screen that tells you how many victory points you get, how many power points you get, and how many enhancement cards you get to draw from the bag. These enhancement cards, I will mention that all the cards in the game are sleeved. The game does come with sleeves. They're premium sleeves, so they're really thick, because every card can be enhanced up to 4 times. These enhancement cards have a blue, green, yellow, or a red dot, and when you put them into the sleeve with the base card, it will enhance it in some way. Each of these different colors will enhance something different, right? So you can change the base value of the card from like a 3 to like an 11, right? It just completely overwrites that number. There's another card that will allow you to add plus or minus basically to the original value. I think there's actually 2 different, like, green and red or something that will give you a plus or minus, and you add all that up into the base value. And that's what the card's value actually is. And the last type of enhancement will give it a special ability, which costs power points to play, normally 1 or 2. And you get power points by, obviously, when you go out, or when you play a card that has a power ability, but you don't activate it, you actually get a power point for doing that. You can put these enhancements anytime you go to play cards. So player 1 can play, player 2 can play, player 3 can play. Player 4 is like, ooh, I don't have anything to meet this, but I'll play this card and I'll put this sleeve in here and bam, place this out. The game will go until you have to start the trick, quote unquote, like the first player who plays in that new round. You have to start a round with 10 points or higher and be the first player to go out. If that happens, you win the game. There's a little bit more to it, but that's pretty much the most of the rules. Now, what I really like about this game is that the enhancement cards are so hilarious, because you don't think somebody's going to be able to go, 3 7s. Well, there's only 3 7s in the game. And they're like, you look at somebody and they're just sitting there contemplating, and they have a way to do it. Now they're just depending on if they want to burn those enhancement cards or not. So you just wait, and they're like, okay. So they slot some things in the sleeves, and they play the cards, and they play their power points, and they're like, okay, bam, bam, I'm in. But then ends up playing like 3 7s. So the player 3 who had this thing is like, oh, I've got triplets. He gets skipped. And you're like, ha ha ha. That's the kind of stuff that is happening every round. And one, it's hilarious. And it is just out of this world that people can pull things off with the enhancement cards. Unlike trick taking games where you have a way to deduce what has been played and what's still in the game. It's more about like, I hope you can't do this. And that's not going to be for everyone, but it is a good and really fun alternative to trick taking games, like a completely different take on it. And it's just super funny. It is really, really good. The game can go a little bit longer than it's intended. It says it's 45 minutes. The reason is because you have to get up to 10 victory points and then win by going out first. And people know that. So it becomes like this Munchkin style. How can I skip you as many times as I can? And then it ends up being a couple people end up having 10 and, that kind of thing. But it's not that big of a deal. It just can get random because you almost want to get real high and then have a lot of enhancement cards just waiting to be played. And the other thing about the enhancement cards is once you play them, they go into the pool of cards. Those, if you're playing 4 players or 5 players, you have 40 or 50 cards or whatever, because they go in that pool and the dealer's going to pass out that entire that entire deck next turn. So the card you played that won you around is now in somebody else's hand potentially. More than likely, just because, there's only one of you and 3 or 4 or 5 of the other people. It is really cool. I like that. This is like the card, what is it called? Card, not drafting, but, construction or whatever. I don't know. They made some kind of term for it for AEG because of Mystic Veil. Although this kind of stuff was happening all the way back with like games like Hecatomb. So I don't know why they're trying to trademark things that are just normal at this point, but whatever. Anyway, I like AEG. There's no dig on them, but I don't like companies who trademark a very basic thing like this. It's not that unique. Other companies have printed things on see-through cards that you stack on other cards to get special abilities to stack with the base card. So either way though, the game is super fun. I do really like it. It is a very change of pace for trick-taking games, and that's what's really cool about it. There is a really cool catch-up mechanism because the later in the round that you go out, the more enhancement cards you actually get to draw from the deck, and that is super cool. It could contribute to how long the game is going because the person who goes out first just gets a lot of victory points and one enhancement card. So they're not going to have as much of a way to win the next, trick or round or whatever. But it is what it is. It works out, honestly. It just might go over 45 minutes, on most cases, I think. And it also depends on your player count and, how much they like to think about, do I want to burn this card now? I mean, not that there's a lot of AP, but it could be because players can keep those cards, kind of stack them up and go ham on like the last round and stuff. So really cool. The only other thing I'll mention is that the card sleeves get a little bit bulked out when it has a lot of enhancements in it. So if there's a dealer that's paying attention and they're flicking the cards out, they kind of know, oh, you got that one card that has all 4 enhancements because that was a really thick packet of card I just passed you, type of thing like that. But I don't know. I guess you could just work it out different way. Maybe have somebody else deal it, and then that's not playing the game, or maybe you could pass them out into the piles, and then everybody randomly selects a pile without the dealer looking at them. It's not that big of a deal, but I did, as the dealer, notice it quite a bit. It could just be because I do a lot of cardistry and card tricks and everything that I'm like, I know that person has something really cool. The only other thing I'll mention about the game is pretty substantial as far as like the game, it's the way it resolves, not the gameplay, is the Ascended card, which is essentially the trump card. What you do is you put this into a card sleeve, and it's almost like a full color print. It's still one of the enhancement cards, so it's still see-through plastic, but it's mostly graphics. And when you put it, you slot it into another card, and it makes them look like a different character or whatever. And they're like super cool looking. And these are trump cards. They don't have a value. You can play them at any point that it's your turn to play cards. So it doesn't matter if it's 1 card or 5 cards being played right now. You can play that one Ascended card. It costs you 2 power points, but you have now trumped that hand and you're winning. If the next player plays an Ascended, they will trump your Ascended, and now they trumped your trump. That's pretty much it. I mean, there's only 4 of those, or however many players you're playing with, because each player starts with one of those Ascended. And I think that's a super cool card, because even if you get to the point where you are not able, right? I have 2 cards left. If somebody plays a double, you're not going to be able to join in, but you can still trump it by spending those power points. And it works out awesome. I guess some people can complain that since the cards are randomly dealt out, one person could get all 4 Ascended cards. However, having that many power points is very unlikely. Now, they could play those cards as singles, because they do have the base number on it, if you play it as a normal card or whatever. And when you do that, I guess you're not activating the Ascended ability, and you'll get a power point from it or something, but it's not that big of a concern. The game is very, I guess, silly in a way, but still competitive, if that makes sense. It's just not silly as in it's funny, but silly as it's just so outlandish. Sometimes you're like, how in the world did you just play triple 14? Some crazy thing. It just works. It's super fun. Yeah. I don't think it's a game you should take massively seriously. I think it is just a very good time, and it's not that complicated of a game. It is a very cool introductory trick-taking game, because there's not a lot to the trick-taking. Like if you were just playing with a base deck, you would get bored after 2 hands, because it's just play a number or play multiples of the number, and that's it. However, it's just really fun when you add in all those other cards, and the card art gives them stuff. Like if it adds like +3 to their, base strength, it might have just printed a sword in their hand or a gun or something. Super, super fun, highly outlandish, very cool. Check it out. That is Custom Heroes. And with that being said, it's time to wrap this episode up. I told you it was going to be very short. I just wanted to get something out there for this week. I debated on not doing an episode, but I really want to stick with the once a week episode stuff. And I'm going to go get ready for Lexicon now. But as I said earlier in the show, if you are going to Lexicon, definitely hit us up on social media. Let us know that. And, or if you see us at the convention, just come up and say hi. I mean, tell us what your favorite thing about the show is. Tell us, what your not favorite thing about the show is, because I'm okay with trimming some fat on the show, right? I get that. So anyway, it'd be cool to hear from you all, and I look forward to seeing anyone who's going to be at this convention. This is the first convention I have been to in 2 years at this point. The last one I went to was Origins, the last time it happened. So not last year, but the year before. Very long time, ready to get back in that saddle. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this episode up. Thank you again for tuning in episode 134 of the MeepleCore Gaming Podcast. This episode was recorded on Thursday, July 29th, 2021. Please send questions and comments to meeplecore@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook groups, and check out the YouTube videos. And until next time, this is Tim Jennette, the Mental Meeple. Keep on rocking and rolling dice.